Hello. Well, I was getting quite depressed about the news, but one of my subscribers has cheered me up because he sent me a link to the Miss America, 50 women from 50 states dressed in a state costume for the Miss USA pageant, and asked me if I'd like to comment on any of them. So I saw this and I thought, oh, this looks like lots of fun. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all of the costumes at different speeds. Now, I do have to say something. I haven't seen this before, except for this first picture. And I thought, well, they look interesting, but I don't know precisely what each state emblem would be. So I might not get the states right, or I might not understand exactly the reference. And if I make a horrendous mistake, please feel free to correct me in the comments. But this looks rather nice, a bit sort of carnival-ish, but rather nice. Now I wonder how I get this down here. Okay, that's right. Now this one. So that there was Miss Massachusetts, which I assume is something to do with football or baseball maybe. Right. Let's have a look at the next one. This is Miss Idaho. Now I know Idaho is famous for potatoes, and she didn't have to hold up a board with potatoes on it. But apart from that, that's a really disappointing costume, isn't it? It's a swimsuit with Idaho on it, or whatever. I can't really see from here. There's nothing to it at all. And she's just holding up a sign saying potatoes. What's that all about? Okay, well, I don't know who designs these costumes. Is it the women themselves, or is there a team behind her? If it's a team of Idahoans, then yeah, that doesn't speak that well for Idaho. If it's her, then well, it means she doesn't have much imagination. Miss Oregon, what's Oregon to? Oh, well, she's got a bird's nest or nest of some sort in her hair, and I know that feeling well. Well, I can't say that costume grabs me by the lapels and shakes me. Are those gophers on her shoulder? Well, whatever. Neither flattering nor particularly sophisticated. Oh, I like that. Miss West Virginia. A giant butterfly. I wonder if she can move them. Anyway, that's very nice. I like that. Okay, props, West Virginia. Miss Washington. That's a transformer, isn't it? Standing in front of a Barbie box. Anyway, a sort of robot, which is quite appropriate for a symbol of Washington, I suppose. Who's this? Miss Iowa. Looking very similar to the previous Miss, full of flowers. I assume these are all state flowers. It's not bad. These costumes all seem a bit showgirly, don't they? Apart from the potatoes one, of course. Miss New Jersey. Now this, New Jersey, fun and games, isn't it, New Jersey? And that's more or less what she's showing. I don't think much of the girl herself, actually, but it may be the costume that's just not flattering her. But certainly it does what it's supposed to do. It shows the state. Miss Wyoming. Well, that categorises, that's in the same category as Miss Idaho, isn't it? Very unimaginative. The sparkly swimming costume and half a flag. Equality state. Well, if they gave equal opportunities for people to design that costumes, then yeah, they didn't do very well, do they, as forced equality often doesn't. This is Miss Nebraska. Nebraska. I don't know anything about Nebraska except it's out in the wilds somewhere, and that's not meant to be insulting in any way. I've just got a feeling of open plains and lots of sort of open countryside and isolated farmsteads. I'm quite sure it isn't like that nowadays. A lot of my images of America are taken from old films I see on television. Anyway, Nebraska. She's dressed up as justice. Is there something about Nebraska that has to do specifically with justice? Anyway, I don't like the costume. Yeah, it's given this young woman a very thick-waisted look, and it doesn't seem to really know what it's doing. All right, let's carry on. Miss Oklahoma. Oh my goodness. Is that even... I think I'm going to stay away from Oklahoma. Okay, Miss Tennessee. Well, she looks like she's about to deliver a showstopper song, doesn't she? It looks like she's meant to be on fire. There appear to be flames wrapping themselves around her. And I don't know what that has to do with Tennessee. I think it's a very nice costume. It's very dramatic. I'm not sure it's quite a symbol of the state, though. Well, it doesn't tell me anything about the state, not like the New Jersey one did. Miss Nevada. Gambling and prostitution. Frank and simple. What's this? Miss District, hang on, District of Columbia. Now, that behind her looks like the tail of a lyre bird. It's the shape of the musical instrument, the lyre. But District of Columbia is the seat of American politics, isn't it? So that lyre thing behind her might have been deliberately chosen. It doesn't really remind me much of what the Lincoln Memorial and all those classical buildings, though. All right. Game of Thrones. Miss Minnesota. Well, what Miss Minnesota has to do with the Game of Thrones, or what, raiding Vikings or Danes or something? I believe it gets very cold in Minnesota in the winter, and probably the fur has something to do with that. But yeah, she doesn't look like she's going to stay terribly warm in that outfit. Miss North Carolina. Are they famous for football or big stadia or something? It looks like she's got a couple of pom-pom girls behind her in a lineup. But the costume itself is not particularly imaginative, is it? Anyway, at least she looks like a woman. Oh, Miss Florida. Now there were Indians, Seminole Indians in Florida, and I do like that skirt. But the top is just an ordinary t-shirt type, stretchy t-shirt. You'd think she could have come up with something a little more imaginative for the top part of her costume, wouldn't you? There's a lack of concentration in some of these costumes. Okay, Miss Connecticut. Well, this looks like a space thing. Looks like Posh Spice, actually. Miss Louisiana. Now, well, she looks happy enough, doesn't she? There's something missing from that. Miss New Hampshire. Goodness me. Well, she looks like a sort of Brazilian carnival, Spanish dancer, whatever. New Hampshire. What does that have to do with New Hampshire? Also, personally speaking, I'd say that costume is cut a bit too high on the hips. Miss Indiana. Miss Indiana. What's she carrying there? Well, I don't know. I don't like the boots. And that costume is really cut too high. No. Horns. Miss Colorado. Well, I mean, Colorado's wilderness, isn't it? Do they have a lot of horned animals there? It's very space age. And it's not a bad costume. It just doesn't tell me much about Colorado. Ah, Miss Virginia. Ha! I rather like that. The sexy firefighter. Does Virginia have a sort of monopoly on firefighting or something? Anyway, she's a pretty girl. She's got a lovely figure. And I do like the costume. I think that's witty. Not much protection from fire, though. Miss Georgia. Eggs? Well, she's a slightly underdeveloped young woman, isn't she? Weird. Miss Maryland. Do you know, I'm noticing something about the costumes here. It used to be that in the 1950s and the 1960s, when they had beauty pageants, the emphasis was on the bust and the waist ratio of the girls. Or possibly the hip, that hourglass shape. That was where the eyes were concentrated in the costumes. In these costumes, it seems to me that this part of the body is the bit that they're emphasising, the upper thigh. All of these girls, or many of them, have these thigh-high boots and these high-cut costumes, and the emphasis is off the waist in some way. In this case, although the waist is exposed in a sort of bikini type thing, there are bits dangling down, so they actually don't make the waist look that thin in relation to the rest of the body. And look, I'm going to go back on a few of them. That was Miss Maryland. There's a thigh thing, another thigh thing, another thigh thing. That not so much, and of course not that, and not that. Here's another thigh thing. It seems to be the point of focus. Here's another upper thigh, another upper thigh. Yeah, that's not that. Yeah, I'm going back down again now. All right, so, but this seems to be a change in emphasis somehow, which I find rather interesting. Okay, right, sorry, I'll go down to, okay, so we got to Miss Maryland. Now here's Miss Texas. Again, another thigh thing, and no waist at all, if you notice. There's a whole lot of stuff in the front of her torso. I really don't see what that has to do with Texas, though. All right, let's go further down. Yeah. I mean, I would have known that was Vermont straight away. Now, this is a really nice costume about Vermont. I can see it's from Vermont. I know Vermont has maple syrup, and she's just like covered in maple leaves, and she's trailing scattered maple leaves behind her. And I don't like that train, by the way. It's not very well done. They must have known that she was going to be, that you would see the train from the underside as well. They should have put a few leaves on there as well, and it appears that they put them only on the outside. And this is just bad costuming. But so yeah, I'd take some points off for that. But you see here. But nevertheless, that's one of the better costumes from a state costume point of view. And this is Miss South Dakota. Can't make up its mind what it wants, really. A bit sort of 1950s prom dress, really. And Miss Ohio in a shorty nightie with flowers. in her hair. I assume they're state flowers. I don't really see much in that costume that tells me about Ohio. And I know it's got banks because I learnt the song on the banks of the Ohio. What's this? Miss Illinois. Well, another... Oh, God, is she thin? Oh my goodness me, how did they let her on the catwalk? That's awful. Somebody give that girl a sandwich. All right, Miss New Mexico. Now, I suppose that's got to do with the god of the Aztecs, that or the plumed serpent, or the bird begins with a Q. Quex something. I'm sorry, I don't know the full name. So she is wearing a vaguely Mexican style Aztec sort of costume, and not bad. The only thing is that, well, it looks like a chicken's head on top, and I don't wish to insult the Aztec gods or Toltec or whatever they were, but that costume, you know what it reminds me of? You know when in one of the Star Wars where they're on an ice planet, Hoth, and Luke Skywalker is on a large creature called a Tauntaun or a town, or yeah, it's something like that, and it dies, and he's stranded in the middle of freezing weather, and they've closed the doors for the night, so he's got to spend the night in the cold, and he cuts open the stomach of his mount and crawls in there to keep warm overnight. Well, that reminds me of that scene. Maybe I'm just a bit too imaginative. All right, let's carry on. Oh, Miss Rhode Island. Yeah, now, Rhode Island Red, that's a sort of chicken, isn't it? And I think that's a reference. And I think she looks great. Yeah, I like that one. Miss Hawaii. This does not look like Hawaii to me, apart from the flowers at the top. I mean, it's a nice costume. But it doesn't look like Hawaii. It doesn't call to my mind Hawaii. Surely that's what it should do. This is Miss Alaska. Somewhat underdressed for Alaska. Look, she's wearing a bikini, which is hardly Alaska. And it's sort of sparkly and frosty. And you could wear that to the beach, really. But I don't know. I don't think that's a costume. No. Miss Mississippi. Well, she's got a great smile, hasn't she? I suppose those are water lilies over her head, and sort of seaweed round her at the bottom of her costume. I suppose that's meant to resemble a river in some way, but no, I don't like it. And also, again, you see a rather wide waist, which I assume is the costume rather than any failing in the young woman's figure. But nobody seems interested in waists anymore. Miss Maine. Well, they're feathers, but I'm assuming that's meant to look like waves. But they're feathers. And I'll bet you there are a lot of men watching that parade praying for an early molt. Okay, Miss Michigan. What on earth is this? She spent no time at all on that costume, except I think she's got some sort of a lightning bolt across her forehead. What does she think she is, Harry Potter? With the number on, I'm assuming there's some sort of football or baseball connection there. That's a terrible costume. Miss Delaware. Well, all right, look, I'm assuming that there's some football connection in Delaware. She's dressed in a football costume. I wouldn't call it terribly elaborate, but nor is it particularly insulting. Maybe Delaware has a women's football soccer team. Oh, no, that's an American football, isn't it? Do they have women playing that game in America or Delaware or wherever? No. But yeah, it's all right. It's nothing striking though, is it? Miss Arizona. Ah, well, sort of Firebird-y. And yes, fine. Again, though, look at that. No waist. Interesting. Miss moving swiftly on. Miss South Carolina. Well, you know, she looks like... okay, she's in purple, but somehow she looks like she should be in red and, you know, in some sort of a show about hell or whatever. That she's holding something like with a stick. It should be a pitchfork. And it's okay as a costume. It doesn't say anything to me about South Carolina, though. Miss North Dakota. Oh, no, yeah, okay. I wouldn't have been able to nail that down specifically to North Dakota, but I would have realised it was some sort of Indian territory type state, and I think that's rather nice. Clean and bright and just, yeah, imaginative. I like that. Another butterfly, Miss Alabama. Where would I start with that? I don't like that. Miss Montana. Oh my goodness me. All right, so she's the rhinestone cowboy type, and I know Montana is famous for wide, well, prairies or whatever, and horse riding and all that sort of stuff. But goodness me, that's a substantial young woman, isn't it, for a beauty pageant? Miss Utah. That doesn't look very Mormon to me. Now she's dressed like a showgirl, or yeah, more reminds me of some extras you might find in the background in a Flash Gordon pic. It's okay. It doesn't tell me a lot about Utah though, and that's for sure. Miss Kansas. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, I don't know whether she's smiling or just grimacing in pain. That costume is definitely cut too high. It's definitely a football reference and it looks dreadful. Okay. Well, again, another Brazilian carnival type thing, Miss Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is famous for beer, is it not? And there are plants all the way around her. I wonder if they're meant to be hops or something that you make beer with. Again, this high boot and thigh business, but not in an objectionable way. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's all right. It's very pretty, it's very elaborate. You can see they've taken a lot of time with that, unlike some of the others. I'm not so sure it tells me that much about Wisconsin, but yeah, if that's hops, then maybe. Here's another one, Miss Arkansas. Again, this high boot thing, and I don't like it. Again, I don't see what this has to do with Arkansas, but maybe somebody can tell me. I do like the big sort of thing behind her, like a frame, but I don't really see what it says. Miss Kentucky. Miss Kentucky? Well, she's wearing a Japanese costume. Well, you know, it looks like a kimono, a type of kimono. She's even wearing... shoes that resemble in a way the Japanese, you know, those wooden sandals they wore to keep their feet out the mud. And then there's this huge flower here. But again, what's that got to do with Kentucky? Now, she should have gone as a fried chicken, I suppose. All right. Miss New York. Well, yeah, showgirly type of stuff. I do like that starburst here. That's very nice. And one of the few costumes that actually emphasised the lady's waist. But this here, which is, I suppose, the New York skyline, it's not very nice. It looks a bit slapdash. I'm sure they could have come up with something a little more elaborate than just a well, basically a shower curtain behind her. All right, let's carry on. Oh, goodness me. Miss California. Well, that's a good costume. That's rather nice. I don't know what sort of flower that is on her head. It's certainly big, but I do like that cloak. Now, when I was talking about an imaginative cloak, this is the sort of thing I was thinking of. They've got a very sheer material, and then they put flowers on it here, inside and out by the looks of things, so that she's just showered in flowers. Maybe some of them are orange blossoms or almond blossoms or something. And yeah, that's rather nice. All right, well, that's it. That's the thoughts and favourites. That's the costume event of the Miss America competition. And I am Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I let you know when I've uploaded a video on @Granniopteryx. On Twitter, Gab and Parler. Please help my channel by liking, sharing and subscribing. And if you are subscribed on YouTube, please check that subscription. I'm not the only one complaining of this. There was another big YouTuber that I was watching sort of like 5 o'clock this morning, and he was saying that a lot of people have discovered they've been unsubscribed without, as he put it, without their knowledge or consent. So this happens a lot with YouTube, and I do ask you to be careful. Another way you can help my channel, of course, is financially. Buy me a coffee, or one of the 2 other options in the description below. Okay, well, yeah, on Miss California, I take my leave. Goodbye. See you next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Granniopteryx design or Grambo, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com, and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.